Thank you to everyone who's tuned into tonight's live at the virtual table event. We're going to get started right now. Here is Laura Washington.
Happy New Year, everyone. 2021, and we are kicking it off with a bang. We've got a packed show for you tonight with an A-list lineup, and we're going to get right to it in a second. But first, I want to let you know that at the Sun-Times, we have a very special offer for you. We have amped up our digital offerings, and we're offering everything you need wherever you are. You can get our Sun-Times e-paper, a daily digital replica of our print product, which is always at paper.suntimes.com. And you can get it with this special offer, the e-paper and everything else online for only $2.49 a month, $2.49 a month. You can't miss it. Check it out by following the information on your screen and be sure to sign up. We'll have more about this later, but now I want to get right to the show and introduce my co-host and Chicago Sun-Times Washington Bureau Chief, the intrepid Lynn Sweet.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, everybody. Political earthquake, Washington, Springfield. We're kicking off the show with Senator Dick Durbin, and then in other segments, we'll be talking about the big change in power in Springfield. Senator Durbin, thank you for joining virtual at the table. We're talking to you the day after President Trump was impeached. My first question, has the House impeachment kicks to the Senate? When will the impeachment trial start? How long will it last?
Well, Lynn, it's the right question. And at this point, Mitch McConnell is the leader in the Senate, the Republican leader in the Senate. And he has said that he will not take it up on his watch, which is meaning when we return on January 19th, he's not going to move to it. On the 19th to perhaps the 22nd, we'll receive the two new senators, the two new Democrats from Georgia. Once they have been certified by the state and were notified, they'll be sworn in. At that point, the breakout in the Senate is 50-50. The tiebreaker, Kamala Harris, former senator from California, now to be our new vice president and the presiding officer of the Senate. So at that point, when that happens, when we get 50-50, we have the tie-breaking vote. The new leader is Chuck Schumer. I talked to Chuck this morning. I said, what's new? Are you and McConnell talking about a trial? He said, no conversation yet. So far, all we know in McConnell's playbook is what he's announced.
Well, I know you sat through one impeachment trial that lasted days and days for the first Trump impeachment trial. What would you think, given the lightning speed that the House impeached Trump, 1 day, 2 hours, not even a day, how long do you think this will take?
Well, this is my third impeachment trial. I was in on the Clinton impeachment. Kind of unique in American history. It's only happened 4 times, impeachment of a president, and I will have been party to at least 3 of those proceedings. The difference, Lynn, is this. If you'll remember the last time, the first impeachment of Donald Trump was over a question of a conversation he had with the president of Ukraine and whether or not he was asking him to invent or discover or disclose information that could be used against Joe Biden. And it went on for several days as they presented the case. But it never reached the point where Mitch McConnell would allow any evidence or witnesses to be considered. Just the arguments made by the lawyers going in, and then the statements by the senators, and then the vote. And McConnell's argument was, listen, we know this case already. We know how bad it is. We don't need any evidence. Well, that's a different kind of trial than I have ever seen. Now comes an entirely unique situation. We are supposed to be the jury on the impeachment of Donald Trump by the U.S. House of Representatives. Well, a jury is supposed to sit back and wait for the lawyers to bring in the evidence. That's a natural trial. The difference, of course, is that all the members of the jury, all the members of the Senate were eyewitnesses to what happened. Yeah. We don't have to be told what happened. We were spirited out of the Senate chamber as fast as we could run to a safe place for hours and hours as the Capitol was ransacked. And we saw afterwards what it looked like. So it's a much different trial than those in the past.
So do you want witnesses?
I'd be open to witnesses, but I will tell you something. Most of us are eyewitnesses, having seen what happened in the Capitol and what was there afterwards. But yes, I would go through the ordinary course with evidence and witnesses.
So you were eyewitnesses to what you saw, but at issue is whether or not President Trump created a high crime and misdemeanor by what he said and did. So would you want Trump, who by the time the Senate takes this up will be out of office, do you want him to testify?
I would certainly be intrigued by his testimony and the defense of his skillful lawyer, Rudy Giuliani. That would be something that would go down in the history books. I will tell you it is unlikely. Clinton didn't testify. Trump didn't testify in his first impeachment. I doubt that he would testify in the second impeachment. But the fact of the matter is, there is evidence that we could gather, but most of it has all been so well documented. You know, Trump was not secretive. He called these people to Washington. He told them what date to arrive. He set up the rally. We heard his speech. He then turned them loose on the Capitol and said, stop them from the electoral vote count. I mean, all of this is right in front of our eyes. It isn't like there's some secret agenda that we're not aware of.
Well, so this is interesting that the jury are witnesses, but let's get down to numbers. It will take a supermajority, 67, to convict him. You'll have 50 senators. Kamala Harris cannot vote in this trial. So do you have 17 Republican senators that you think you could get to go along with presuming the 50 Democrats stick together?
I don't think anybody knows the answer to that question. Here are some of the clues. What does Mitch MCConnell say? Well, he said he believed this president committed impeachable offenses in what he did. He didn't say he would vote to convict him in an impeachment. I got to tell you, Mitch MCConnell, I have studied for all the years that I've been in the Senate, and he's been a leader. He's an unusual man. He's a man who really is kind of quiet and stoic in his temperament. But I saw him in the so-called secret location where they took the leaders away from the Capitol when the rioters were running through it. I saw this man, and he was clearly angry like I've never seen him before. He has spent his lifetime in the United States Senate as a staffer and as a member of the Senate. He has spent his majority of his lifetime, as I have, in that building, the Capitol building. And he believed, I think he felt as I did, this was a desecration of an American political cathedral, if you will, and a place that we valued. When I think, I said on the floor, when you think of all the tens of thousands of tourists that come through there and they hush them to quiet down, to show respect for the building, and you think of the rotunda where bodies have been lying in state, the latest being John Lewis, we honor American heroes in that building. It was a hospital, a field hospital for the Union Army in the Civil War. I mean, this is an amazing piece of real estate, and it was defiled by the Trump rioters and mob. This president incited that mob to come in and destroy that building, and they did a damn good job of it, unfortunately.
So this will take place as Biden is becoming president. How will he get the confirmations he needs done and to start his agenda? And hopefully later on, we'll get to it, his COVID rescue package that came out today. But as we wrap this impeachment conversation part up, and then I'll kick it to Laura for some questions. How will Biden get his agenda done if you're doing an impeachment trial of Trump?
It's a good question whether we can do the impeachment trial and also the business of the Senate. But I want to make it clear, and I think everybody understands, this is the last thing in the world that Joe Biden wants to see. He doesn't want the beginning of his presidency to be clouded by this impeachment trial. He's got business to do. He's been waiting anxiously for months to start on his own effort to break the back of this pandemic, his own effort to make sure that people are vaccinated, his own effort to restore this economy and put people back to work. I mean, he wants to prove that he's got the skill to do it, and he's being overshadowed by this political situation that Donald Trump has created. I hope we can do both. The American people want us to do the coronavirus and the economy as priorities.
I'm gonna kick this to Laura, because before we let too much time go, and I know, by the way, congratulations, you're just starting your 5th term, and you will be the Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman, and we'll get to that. But Laura, take it away for a little next topic that we want to grill the senator on.
Thank you, Lynn. And before we leave impeachment, I have one more follow-up to pick up on something you said earlier, Senator. You mentioned that you've been around, you've been involved with 3 impeachments of presidents during your career and your life. Three out of the 4 that have happened, Richard Nixon was the first of those three, or
He was never.
Andrew Johnson. Nixon was right at the precipice, just about to be impeached, and he resigned.
Right, right. Okay. Forgive me. So, but these have been in 3 cases. We've had presidents that have been in deep trouble and have been nearly impeached or impeached in our lifetimes. What does that say about American politics today?
Well, Trump is certainly an unusual man in many respects, and to be impeached twice is unheard of in American history. But we've never had a president like him before, and I hope we never have one like him again. The situation with Bill Clinton was a long saga. Those of us in politics remember it well, that led to an impeachment trial where he was exonerated in the Senate. But I hope this does not become commonplace. I hope that we have leaders like Barack Obama and George W. Bush and others that you can disagree with on policy, but no one is questioning whether they've committed high crimes and misdemeanors. That should be rare, and I hope it will be.
Well, it does make you wonder, though, in such a short period of time in American history that we've had this kind of conflict. And does it say that our politics have just become so fraught and fractured and divisive that we can't get the business done without having to try to throw presidents out of office?
Laura, that's a given. The country is divided, but I would hope that impeachment is saved for the most outrageous circumstances. And I certainly believe this one, inciting an insurrection, is something unthinkable for any American president.
So I want to take it to more locally to Illinois. We had some big news this week when we saw Mike Madigan step down after a very long historic tenure as Speaker of the House, nearly 50 years. He also has another very powerful position as leader of the Democratic Party in Illinois, and many people who criticize him have felt that he had too much power, and that possibly led to some of the scandal that he's been engulfed in, particularly around the ComEd investigation. Do you think that he should continue as head of your party in Illinois, given that he's finally leaving the House speakership role and that he's in the midst of this investigation?
No, he should not, and I hope he will step down. Laura, on November the 4th, the day after the election, I did Chicago Tonight, and they interviewed me by Zoom, and I said the same thing. It's time for Mike Madigan to step down as the chairman of the Democratic Party of Illinois. And I said it because I'd watched all these campaigns at every level across the state, no matter what you were running for, Illinois Supreme Court, Illinois House, Illinois Senate, Congress, Senator. The issue was Mike Madigan. Here he is, the chairman of the party, and he is the major issue in every single campaign. Down here in Springfield, where I live, we had a wonderful young woman running for Congress. She had a good chance to win. Millions of dollars were spent trying to attach her to Michael Madigan. She had no connection to him, but she was defending herself against Michael Madigan. He should step down as party chair. I hope he will soon.
Have you talked to him about this? Would you personally urge him, talk to him personally to ask him to do this? He's not helping your party in Illinois right now by continuing to lead it.
I've made my position on this so clear. I said it on November 4th. On November 5th, Governor Pritzker agreed with me. The same day, Tammy Duckworth said, my fellow senator, said she agreed and he should be taken down as speaker as well. So we are outspoken on the subject. He knows what I feel, and I feel even more strongly about it today. I hope he will quietly give up the leadership of the party and let some others lead our party.
I'd like to take it back to Washington. You've sort of alluded to this, concerns about safety in the Capitol next week. We've been through a lot of this country already. There's a lot of talk about the FBI being concerned not only about the Capitol, but about possible violence across this country. What concerns do you have, and how confident you are that we're going to have a safe and secure and peaceful inauguration next week?
We have more troops, American troops and National Guard in Washington, D.C. now than any time since the Civil War, more than we had at the peak of the Afghanistan war. It is an armed city, and they're creating a defense for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to be sworn in to office peacefully without any concern. And I know they're going to do everything possible to make sure that happens. I feel safe in Washington. But let me tell you, they're not going to stay there forever. The troops are going to leave. The fences that we see may come down soon. And we're going to be back in business as usual, but with the understanding that at any given moment, all hell could break loose again. That is what Donald Trump has unleashed on America. That is the reality. These people came from far and wide, all across the United States, at his beck and call. They marched to the Capitol at his instruction, and they did damage to that building, the likes of which I have never seen. I hope that goes away soon. I hope those who are responsible for it pay the price. I know the FBI and Department of Justice are working now to arrest those who were boasting and bragging on Facebook about the stuff they had stolen and broken. Well, I hope that continues. I hope hundreds end up being indicted as a result of this.
By the way, just to follow up on, and I realized there was something left on impeachment. So the Senate has the option, if you were to get the votes to convict, you could, the Constitution says you could then consider him to be disqualified to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit in the United States. That means he would be barred from running for office again. Do you think, and there's also some study now being made on the 14th Amendment, if somehow there could be a mechanism to bar him from running again, is that something you might be studying too in your role as the Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman coming in?
It would be the second vote. Usually the first vote is on the conviction based on the impeachment. And then a second vote is called on a question of whether a person can run again. It's provided in the Constitution. It's a separate vote. And I definitely think that would be likely to be the case if we voted for impeachment conviction.
And before we lose you, what is, you will be the incoming chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. You served on the panel for so many years. What is it you want to do, and what is the first hearing that you foresee having, or the topic that you want to tackle?
I'm working out now, waiting to make sure I know my membership. We're based on the negotiations of McConnell and Schumer as to the committee breakout. It might be a tied committee. It might be 10 members on the side, which would reflect the evenly tied Senate. But I would chair it because I mentioned earlier Kamala Harris's tie-breaking vote. I would tell you some of the topics that I think need to be taken up and quickly. And first, I want to bring in the FBI. We haven't had an oversight hearing with the FBI, and I can't remember when. They need to sit down and explain what happened on January the 6th, but more importantly, talk to us about how we're going to deal with domestic terrorism. What we saw on January 6th is an American brand of terrorism. People came in the Capitol with guns, with pipe bombs, with Molotov cocktails. They attacked the police and killed one of the policemen who were performing his duty, and then did damage throughout. That was an act of terrorism. It was incited by the President of the United States, and I have no doubt about that. But that is not isolated. It is a growing phenomena across America. The militia, the white supremacy groups on the left too. I'm not excluding them. I want all political groups that are engaging in violence now to be carefully monitored and controlled as much as possible.
So is that a hearing on extremism or terrorism?
On domestic terrorism. First, the FBI, domestic terrorism, immigration. We have so many issues that we need to take up in that Judiciary Committee.
And today, and just a few minutes ago, President-elect Biden made official his COVID rescue package. It is a huge package of help, from another $1,400 to individual payments to rent relief, a lot of other things that's on the Democratic agenda, including the $15 an hour minimum wage. That all isn't going to pass in a 50-50 Senate. I mean, could you, as we have, I know only a short time left with you, could you just preview a little bit how the Democrats are going to navigate it when there's so much in this bill, and will some of it be broken out? How do you think
remember the first COVID relief bill, the CARES Act?
Right, there was operation.
Passed the Senate 96-0, almost $3 trillion. The second COVID relief bill, which we just passed several weeks ago, $900 billion, passed with 90 or 92 votes in the Senate. So initially people said, well, that's never going to pass. It's too big a number. I think America realizes, and they should. We've been advised by the Federal Reserve as well as the incoming Secretary of the Treasury, Janet Yellen. We've got to keep our foot on the accelerator to keep this economy moving forward, creating jobs and giving businesses a chance to recover. And if we step back and say, well, we don't need any more stimulus at this point, I'm afraid we could see the situation get worse, more people out of work, and the deficit even worse than it might be with the money that we're suggesting to be spent. I completely agree with Joe Biden. The highest priority has to be the delivery of the vaccinations across America. If he can reach his goal of 100 million Americans vaccinated in the first 100 days, we're going to start to break the back of this pandemic once and for all.
Thank you very much, Senator Dick Durbin. Now we're going from, and please join us again at the virtual table. This has been a very timely conversation. We appreciate very much for having us. Please come again. And we're now going to vault from Washington to Springfield, where we have a big discussion on the next chapter in Illinois state politics. So Laura, take it away.
Next time we're going to have the senator, we're going to have him back at Yoshi's because that vaccine is going to be working and we're going to get these restaurants open again. And we're going to come back to Yoshi's as we did early last year, Lynn, before the virus took off. So I'd like to introduce our next round of guests. We're really pleased to have Senate Majority Leader Kimberly Lightford with us, and also departing state representative David McSweeney, who your last day in the Illinois House was Representative McSweeney?
On a historic day, my last day.
So you're free. You're free, and we're thrilled that you're both with us tonight. I wanted to start with you, Representative McSweeney, in terms of just to segue back into this impeachment discussion. Obviously, you didn't have a vote in Washington this week, but if you'd been a member of the House, how would you have voted on impeachment, and what is your view on whether or not a Senate trial should go forward for the president, either before or after he leaves office?
Well, my view is that the president's actions were obviously inexcusable. He can't even defend it himself. But as a country, it's time for us to move forward. President Biden is being sworn in. As you mentioned, he's got an economic plan, which I obviously have some concerns on a policy basis with, but we have to move forward. So I would have voted no, because the president has less than a week in office, and the focus of this country going forward should be on unity. That's the campaign theme that President-elect Biden ran on. And I don't see any purpose right now moving forward. There could be criminal actions in the future that are investigated. But as far as the impeachment is concerned, I think the best thing to focus on right now is unity, to move forward and focus on hopefully trying to get a bipartisan legislation in Washington done. That's how I look at it.
So you don't feel that you abhor the things, the crime, what maybe they weren't crimes, but in your view, but you don't believe that any action should have been taken against the president because essentially we're running out of time?
He'll be out of office next Wednesday, and as you see, his obviously public opinion numbers have dropped dramatically, and there is, it's inexcusable, obviously, the rhetoric. But I don't see any purpose when we have major issues in this country, and we obviously have issues in Illinois that we're going to talk about here soon. That for less than a week to put the country through this. I think the full focus of Congress going forward should be trying to develop positive bipartisan legislation. And as Lynn was asking the question, it's unclear how you could try to do both. I think we need to move forward. We have a new president next Wednesday. Okay.
Senator Lightford, historic moment in Springfield this week, certainly for a lot of reasons. A new House Speaker, Chris Welch, which is the first House Speaker in a very long time, first African American. I know you're a member of the Legislative Black Caucus, and you were a supporter of this moment. So, what's your reaction to this, and why do you think that Welch is the right person at the right time?
Well, thank you, Lynn, for having me on tonight. And I'm so excited about Chris Welch. He's actually my state representative. We grew up in the same community, and I've known him for a very long time. And I just believe that he's posed for the moment. I joked with you before we came on live of how things happen in such a short period of time. He was identified as the consensus candidate, and no one knows better who should lead them than their own caucus. He was selected by his caucus at this time to take on a huge challenge, and I believe that Chris is up for it and that he'd do a wonderful job.
And what is it about his skills and talents? People are still talking about Mike Madigan's skills and talents, even as he leaves the scene. Obviously, he had a lot more experience than Chris Welch has coming in. But what is specifically about his skills and talents do you think will make him a capable leader?
Bringing people together. Chris has the ability to work with people within his caucus, but then also outside of his caucus and work with those across the aisle. Before he became a state representative, he was the board chair of our largest school district in the Maywood Proviso community. And I recognize how he was able to negotiate with not only labor, but with administration and with the community and bringing everyone together. He brought that same skill set here with him to Springfield, and he developed those relationships and pretty much matured them to the point that they felt that he should be the next speaker to lead their caucus. And I agree with their selection.
Now, one of the questions that's hanging out there about him is that he is a close associate of Mike Madigan, worked very closely. And some people are saying, well, will he really be independent? Will Chris Welch really be running the House, or will Mike Madigan continue to be a shadow speaker, so to speak, and continue to have influence? How would you respond to that question?
Well, Lynn, you know, I've heard that too. I've heard so many things about Chris in this short period of time that I knew nothing about him in that manner. I'd hope Chris remained independent. He was an independent candidate when he ran for state representative almost 10 years ago. He's shown to keep and maintain that independence. And it's unfortunate that if you develop a relationship with your leadership that you're seen as weak in doing so. I thought him developing a relationship with the speaker was the wise thing to do. As any member, new members should develop a relationship with their leadership. Now, I'm holding him accountable as his state senator and as just him being in our community and a part of our Black caucus and being the first Black. We all holding Chris accountable, but we're going to support him and hope that he's very successful in his efforts and that he can maintain the relationships that he built and the reason why they believed in him enough to vote for him to be their speaker.
I want to jump in because I'll have, Senator Lightford, think about this for a moment. It's not really about relationships. What the juice that Madigan had was because he was able to raise money, particularly from big labor. He was able to wield the franc, as a state party chairman. He had a grip over members. They were called ducklings because none of them had the ability to raise their own money. So they became addicted to having him fund their campaigns. I mean, come on. And Dave McSweeney, we're not going to forget you. I'm going to get you in a minute here. But I want to get real for a moment.
Sure.
They were called, when I covered Springfield a million years ago, and when we have Mark Brown and Rachel Hinton come in a little bit, I saw it for myself, and it's still there. Those House members can't run their own political operations, and that's part of his power. Come on, what's Chris Welch going to do?
Well, Lynn, but didn't he want it that way? I don't know that they couldn't run it, but that's what he offered to them so that he could keep the power.
And then they became
he didn't handpick Chris Welch. He didn't bring Chris Welch to the legislature.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I want your quick assessment as to how, this is, what's going to happen. Are we going to have the skies part and these members are just going to have to be on their own? Or is he going to keep the money coming because he could get the money out of labor in Illinois and the unions to give to keep people in control through money? What do you think?
Well, I think that the speaker, you're comparing a veteran speaker 40 years to a new speaker that was just elected yesterday. So I don't know how fair it is to do an assessment on their leadership styles. But let me say this, Lynn, I do know that labor needs to support the Democrat Party no matter who's the speaker. So there will be support from labor if they like to keep the support that we push through for them in both chambers. And so whomever the speaker is, labor is going to be on the Dem side of it.
Okay, hold that thought. David McSweeney, you're one day out of the legislature, so now you have some new and profound wisdom to share. So the Republican Party of Illinois right now is at a low point. You're looking for a party chairman. No one, we'll see what happens in that. There's no candidate that surfaced to challenge J.B. Pritzker or Tammy Duckworth in the 2022 cycle. And the best thing that the party has had running against Mike Madigan is now vanished. Dave McSweeney, what's your party going to do?
Let me say, Chris Welch, first of all, I came in with him in 2012. So we have a lot of ideological differences, but I've worked very closely with him and have actually a personal friendship based on our work over the years. So I do believe that Chris has an opportunity here to work on a bipartisan basis. The Republican Party of Illinois has hit an absolute low point. The leadership of the party and certainly the leadership, I think, in both the House and the Senate leadership, especially over the years. So where we are now is we are in a state that is insolvent, that is facing not a $1.9 billion deficit. That is the published number. But remember, the state of Illinois has actually borrowed $3.2 billion from the federal government through the municipal loan facilities. We have over a $5 billion deficit. So for governor, Pritzker has a lot of problems to deal with, not only a budget crisis, but he will try to raise taxes again. And that's a mistake. People are leaving the state. So who are the best candidates for governor at this point? Rodney Davis would be a good candidate. Darren LaHood. It's going to take somebody who has experience, somebody who actually is solution oriented. And if we put up a mainstream candidate that actually will fight for lower taxes, less spending, and real reform, even though Governor Pritzker has $4 billion in his personal wealth, I think that we can make it competitive. But you're right. The Republican Party of Illinois is a joke. It's non-existent. Hopefully we'll get new leadership. There's some good candidates that behind the scenes are stepping up, and we'll get a real candidate for governor. And we'll make this a competitive race. And of course, we have redistricting. That's going to be part of it. We'll see how that plays out.
And one of the people that has been mentioned frequently is Adam Kinzinger, the congressman who has been very outspoken. He's been critical of Donald Trump over time, and even more recently.
Well, he was one of the
more critical
who voted to impeach Donald Trump.
That's correct. And he's reportedly looking at possibly running for governor. What kind of a candidate do you see him being if he decides to run for governor or for the Senate?
Well, my issue with Congressman Kinzinger is I don't know where he stands, on the issues. He was a hardcore conservative, ran as a Tea Party candidate. Then he voted about 95% of the time with President Trump, and now he claims he hates President Trump. So I don't like inconsistent candidates. He would be probably my last choice for governor, not just based on what he said recently. I like people to tell me where they stand and stick by it. So of the congressional delegation, Darren LaHood and Rodney Davis would be much better. I know where they stand. They're both proven winners. Those are my top two candidates for governor. And my issue with Kinzinger is he's flip-flopped multiple times. He loves to be on CNN. He loves to be in the press. But remember, this is a guy who voted with President Trump 95% of the time, who ran as a Tea Party candidate. I don't like the inconsistency. I like people to stay consistent and tell me where they stand.
And you yourself are thinking about running for higher office. That's one reason you left the legislature, correct? Where do you stand on that?
I'm not going to run for governor. I've always said that one of the things I might be interested in is running for U.S. Senate. Ran for Congress. Lynn covered it back in 2006. That's something I would look at in the future, but have made no decisions on. But I'm definitely not running for governor. But I do think our top two candidates right now are Rodney Davis and Darren LaHood.
Okay. Lynn?
So when you look at the political landscape, looking at remap, who is of the 5 Republicans that are in the House now, since the Democrats control the remap process, and we're probably going to lose 1 or 2 seats, Dave McSweeney, who is the most vulnerable Republican member of Congress in Illinois, speaking as a legislator, one day out, who had a big knowledge of how the legislature does the maps for Congress and other units of government?
Well, I think Democrats, because of the pickups Republicans will have in other parts of the country, will probably try to eliminate 2 Republicans, the 1 seat that will lose, and probably put 2 Republicans together. So I would say Bost and Mary Miller could very well end up in a primary, and you could see Adam Kinzinger's district carved up dramatically. I believe Rodney Davis has some risk in that too, because that district obviously is very expansive. So I think the Democrats will try to be very aggressive. And they will try to not only take out Republicans and put the 1 seat we're losing, but potentially 2. That's why we have to organize. We have to make sure that we are setting a positive agenda going forward. But I do think the Democrats will be very aggressive. So Bost and Miller potentially in the same seat and carving up the Kinzinger district. That's what I believe.
See, I disagree. Quick thing, maybe because I just wrote it in a column this morning. I think J.B. Pritzker should put everything whatever Kinzinger wants, make him happy, have that suit fit him, have that district fit him like a suit, so he's not encouraged to run for Senate or governor, because he does have name ID. Tough job in a Republican primary, but I would just make Kinzinger happy and say, please just stay in Congress. We'll give you the district you want, and let the 4 other Republicans be carved up. But anyway.
And Lynn, let me say something to that, because I respect your opinion. Is because of his inconsistent positions over the years, I think there is a 0% chance that Adam Kinzinger could win a primary. And not just because of the recent issues, because this is, again, somebody who ran as a Tea Party candidate, somebody who voted with President Trump 95% of the time, and now is leading the opposition. So the inconsistency makes it impossible, I think, for him to get through a primary. We have better choices with Ronnie Davis and with Darren LaHood.
I'd like to come back to Senator Lightford, and since we're on redistricting, there's a challenge in terms of the remap for African-American voters and African-American elected officials, because there's been such a significant population loss not only in the Chicago area, but in Illinois. What is your view on how to, do you think it's likely that there are going to be African-American seats lost in the legislature in this remap, and is there a way to avoid that from happening?
Well, Lynn, throughout the pandemic, we pushed really hard to make sure resources was available to get our messaging out, to vote, to cast their information for census. We were challenged in this pandemic. We did a good job, but numbers proved to be a lot lower than 10 years ago. But it's still our hope that we don't lose too many African-American seats, that the map will indicate a smaller number of population that's utilized to come up with that number per district. And so if there is a risk of losing a congressional seat, we're hoping that it's definitely not in the African-American community as well. So we're working along with our Latino caucus and other marginalized communities to protect our boundaries and make sure that we can spread things out where it's consistent. We meet all of the gerrymandering and all of the rules and regulations, and hope that we're not losing too many seats.
What about General Senator?
I'm sorry, Lynn.
What about your seats in the Illinois General Assembly? You're not going to lose them, but they're, who is most in jeopardy?
Well, we're hoping that the population number just may take a drop. When I first became senator in 1998, my number was a lot less in population than it is today. So we're just hoping that with our shift in members, it's 42 Democrats and 17 Republicans, maybe the shift will not affect the Democrat seats so much.
Well, how do you do that though? I mean, you got to do more than hope. What's the strategy? Do you have a strategy, or do your members have a strategy?
Well, so 10 years ago, Governor Quinn really didn't participate in the Democratic process or the redistricting process so much. He left it up to President Cullerton, and he pretty much drew most of the map, and his staff had the ability to do so. Now we're in a position where President Cullerton's no longer here. We've not been told that Governor Pritzker will not participate. Senator Andy Menard has been a part of both remaps this last 2010 and as a staff member in 2000, and now he just went to join the Pritzker staff to help out with redistricting. So we do have some expertise still around the building. President Cullerton is willing to assist us, Courtney Nottage, Ron. There's quite a few people that are still a part of the 2010 remap and the 2000 remap.
So has the Black Caucus done any fundraising and to try and get lawyers and try to get the strategy together with outside consultants to protect special interests? Tell us what you've done on that front and who you've hired.
Okay. I was chairman of the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus for the past 6 years, Lynn, and I just ended that post just the day before yesterday. And in the midst of all that, we have focused on redistricting. We've had quite a few hearings within our caucus to learn about strategies and how things go. We're looking to include Ron Holmes, Courtney Nottage, some of those who have participated in the redistricting process. And I recently had a conversation with former President John Cullerton as well. And so we're just looking to make sure that we have that institutional knowledge. They've been a part of the process before. They can help us build out. And we have done some fundraising through our foundation.
Yeah. What's the name of the entity that you did the fundraising through for the remap?
The Black Caucus Foundation has been helpful for us in making sure that subjects like this are important. And so we've done some golf outings over the past few years and targeted some resources.
And how much have you raised so far for the Black Caucus Foundation remap effort to hire people to help, to help keep your seats?
Well, we're about 650,000. We
Wow.
ended up needing to use quite a bit of our resources in this pandemic to support kids who were not connected, who had a loss in digital divide. So we've been doing a lot of PPE. So we ended up spending some resources that we set aside for redistricting, but we're hanging on as much as we can so we can keep that commitment.
Interesting. So, one last question I have for McSweeney that I asked, I didn't get an answer, and then Laura, maybe we'll move on because I'm anxious to get to Mark Brown and Rachel Hinton and tell us everything we don't know. David, you didn't tell me what your party, which is just a smoldering ember right now, as you said, is going to do without having its focus on Mike Madigan. What's your organizing principle without Mike there to help you?
Well, here's the proudest accomplishment I've had since 2013. I led the fight against the progressive income tax, in getting all Republicans on board. Then back in 2014, been able to defeat a Democratic effort to bring it to the floor. And then recently, with a lot of people behind it, and of course, a lot of financial support, we were able to defeat the progressive tax. So I think there's a pattern that we can actually follow, run on issues, and specifically run on the anti-tax message, reducing spending in the state of Illinois. Again, it was a humiliating defeat for the governor recently on the progressive tax proposal. And if we get a good, solid candidate for governor, like Darren LaHood or Rodney Davis, I believe under their leadership and with fighting a message of reform, that's what we could do to win. The Mike Madigan message, you're right, is it's over. And we need to stand for something. One of the reasons we're in so much trouble here in the state of Illinois is we've had such weak leadership in the General Assembly with the House and Senate leaders and the Illinois Republican Party. With this gubernatorial race, we have an opportunity to do what we did right against the progressive tax, unite on a message of real reform and lower taxes in the state of Illinois. If we do that, capture the governor's mansion, we're back in business.
Well,
Lynn,
we'll see.
Lynn, can I add to that? I think one thing Representative is leaving out is that they had a poor governor. We had a poor governor, the previous administration, that didn't pass a budget for 2 years and held a hostage state and caused our hole to be bigger. So most of our fiscal challenges, not all, but many of them was built upon the previous administration.
And as you know, I from the conservative side on the issues, I fought Bruce Rauner. He was an awful governor.
I agree.
All that said, I'm not going to defend Bruce Rauner. Everybody agrees he was a failure. So going forward, if we get a real candidate like Rodney Davis or Darren LaHood running for governor, I think we could be competitive and win back this governor's race.
Okay, we'll see. Thanks so much, Senator Lightford. Dave McSweeney, now the former Republican state rep. See you soon. We'll see if everything we've said pans out with what happens to the Republican Party. And now let's bring in Sun-Times political reporter Rachel Hinton, Sun-Times political columnist Mark Brown. They're fresh from Springfield. Mark and Rachel, tell us what we don't know and what's going to happen in the next chapter of Illinois politics after we've just had this earthquake, this political earthquake with the toppling of Mike Madigan. And again, Mark, welcome to the show. Rachel, you've been on before. Rachel, go first. What is the real political ramification of Mike going? And or is there an inside story you could tell us about why he finally decided to fold?
So with former Speaker Michael Madigan leaving, it opens up a whole world of questions. Will he stay on as a representative? Will he stay on as head of the Democratic Party of Illinois? Right now, I don't know those answers. We'll have to ask Mark in a second whether or not he knows or could give an update. But I think that's probably on the minds of most people right now, especially as they look ahead with new Speaker Emanuel Chris Welch. Really, I think the question over the next days or weeks will be, as he begins to formulate an agenda and comes off of this high of winning and being elected speaker, will he hold to the promises he made in that speech yesterday in the Bank of Springfield Center. He said he wants to work with Republicans. He said that he is going to honor commitment he made to the House Democratic Caucus about the rules and make sure that it's a collaborative process instead of just drafting some rules and sending it out for basically a stamp of approval from members. So I think we'll have to see whether or not he holds to those promises, and obviously what comes next for former Speaker Michael Madigan.
Mark, what's your take? What's your take on it? You've been watching Springfield for, I'm sure, longer than you really want me to say publicly, but this is a historic moment. Chris Welch has got his work cut out for him. What, any behind the scenes things that you learned when you were in Springfield, or that you know from your years of covering this, that we need to be thinking about as we move forward?
Well, I won't say what I've learned here recently, but I mean, overall, I do believe that, this is true, that that Chris Welch is a guy who, he can work with people. That's how he got to this spot. It looks like, oh, this just happened in 48 hours between Monday morning when Mike Madigan pulled out of the race and Wednesday morning when it came together for Chris Welch. But Chris Welch is a guy who's only been in the legislature 8 years, but he's been laying his building blocks. You could see that. One of the representatives who nominated him yesterday talked about as soon as he was on his way to the legislature, Chris Welch mentored him in his politics, mentored him in how to be effective in Springfield. I have over the years seen Chris Welch work with the Latino caucus on immigration issues and on the census. He saw early on, you build those relationships, they will help you. They helped him yesterday. He got the Black caucus to support him, then he got the Latino caucus to support him. And Chris Welch showed leadership, not necessarily in a way that the public might like. He chaired the investigative committee that the Republicans asked for to look into Madigan's relationships with ComEd. Well, he used it basically to defend Madigan, and then to kill off that part of their own investigation, which he took one for the team, right? That needed to be done for the Democrats. Although I thought it stunk, but the other guys in the party, the other members, they look up, okay, this guy will take leadership. A few years ago, he filed the lawsuit so that they could get paid when Leslie Munger cut off their pay during the budget crisis. Think about that. It wasn't popular. So
Mark, in terms of that comment piece, though, doesn't that raise questions about his loyalty to Mike Madigan, the close tie to Mike Madigan, and it raised doubts among some folks, particularly, I'm sure, Republicans, that this guy is a Madigan guy and that it's going to be more business as usual going forward politically?
Well, whatever business goes forward will be Chris Welch's business. I do not buy into the idea that Mike Madigan is still going to be running Springfield. Chris Welch learned from Mike Madigan. He may have picked up some bad habits along the way. We'll have to see. But Chris Welch is his own guy, and I'm sure even he doesn't know quite how he's going to go about this job quite yet. And if at some points along the way he reaches out to Mike Madigan to understand how to do things, that would make sense in some ways. I mean, you need a tax increase. It's not easy to put something like that together. Maybe he'll need some help pulling it together. But the fact that he was able to pull this off and get this job for himself, that shows some real political skills right there.
So I'm wondering, to go back to the question of Madigan, even independent of if he stays in the House or not, The reason we have a new speaker now is that it's the beginning of a new session, and the members had to elect their speakers, their officers, their leaders. In the state party, Madigan's term is not over. He can continue unless there's some pressure to somehow get him to quit or he resigns. So otherwise he's in. So do you see any movement to try to get him to step? I mean, what Durbin said was powerful. Senator Duckworth, powerful, but it's a state central committee that probably has influence. But in any event, do you see within that state central committee, which is a small group, you can't replace someone with no one? And is there anyone out there that you think either could influence Madigan to step aside, or is there another force that can make him step down? And I want our viewers to know, in getting the speakership, it was a counting game. You got to get to 60. Once 19 people said that they wouldn't vote for him, you knew the game was in play. It's a real different set of dynamics for the state party. Mark, what do you think will happen?
Well, a lot of people would point out that Madigan, the only reason he wanted to control the state party was to have it help him keep his majority in the House. That's all he really cared about. He didn't care about any of the normal things that a state party chairman does. He wasn't into party building. He wasn't into coordinated campaigns with presidential candidates. A very big point of frustration within the party through the years. They would compensate for it in different ways. So there is a thinking that he, maybe he really doesn't want this. Now, at the same time, you got to feel like, this is hitting pretty hard. Maybe he's not going to be in a big hurry to step aside. He certainly isn't going to want to be made to feel that he's being forced out. That's what he's proved that to us, right? And nobody has the votes to get him out. Apparently, he has, over the years, he has built the state party apparatus around his people who support him. So there haven't, that really, you mentioned Durbin and Duckworth, they and the Pritzker, they all said this, and everybody just kind of shrugged and go, hey, yeah, it doesn't matter what you want. He controls this group. So I think it'll happen. Will it happen next month? I don't know. I think it'll happen in fairly short order. I do expect him to resign from the legislature. Rich Miller reported today in Capitol Facts that he was cleaning out his Springfield apartment. I have not independently confirmed that, but Rich is pretty good. So I would think he knows that his time on that stage is done.
Well, interesting tidbit. Lynn, I wanted to come to Rachel because Mark talked about sort of the building blocks that Chris Welch put together to get to the speakership. One of the Black Caucus, Latino Caucus, but women were a part of that conversation as well. And there were several women who were running and others who were thinking about running. And ultimately, it was not a woman that was elevated to the speakership. There was some conversation too around some allegations that were made against him regarding some charges of domestic violence. In the day, Representative Kelly Cassidy came out and said that she had some concerns about that. Do you see the women's issues, those women's issues, both dating back to Mike Madigan's tenure and some of the challenges and controversies he faced? Is that going to be lingering out there, both in the General Assembly, as an issue and a concern?
I think so. I don't think that we've heard the last of about these domestic violence allegations. Even though Speaker Welch says, I wasn't charged. I've since reconciled with the woman and her family. I think that people still have questions about this, and I don't think that they feel like the issue is now swept under the rug, or they're going to forget about it just because of the statement. Whether or not, or rather the outcome of this investigation, if there is an investigation, I think that remains to be seen. But I don't think that legislators are going to forget about it. I don't think women legislators are going to forget about it. There was a photo that was on Capitol Facts of women in the House Democratic Caucus and Speaker Welch huddled, I think on Tuesday. And I have been told, they talked about these allegations. He addressed concerns. He tried to talk to them about this. And so I believe that he was able to convince enough of these women, hey, this is behind me. This isn't who I am. I didn't do this. But I think that there are still questions about it, that people still want to know what went on here.
Well,
Is there some talk? Is there some talk on an investigation? You mentioned an investigation. Is there some discussion about that?
Representative Cassidy, in her statement, said that she wants these things to be vigorously reviewed. Other than that, no, I don't know of any investigation right now.
So one thing that is a question, speaking of relationships, Rachel first, then Mark, what do you think the relationship will be between Welch and Governor Pritzker? Because Pritzker's only known Madigan as a House Speaker, and the ways of Madigan, the inscrutable Mike Madigan, and the way he ran things. So now with this whole new ball game, Rachel, what do you think is going to be, if this was a dance, if they were a couple dancing, who would be the lead here?
I think Governor Pritzker would be the lead, given that, Speaker Welch is new. He's finding his footing. He's trying to figure out, how do I work with the governor? How do I begin to address, the state's very large budget problems? So I think that Governor Pritzker would be leading those conversations and begin to include him in, budget conversations. So I think really Governor Pritzker would lead because he has more of the experience about budget issues, about the state's problems, about, everything that goes on in the state. But I think that Speaker Welch would, hold his own there.
Well, he's going to
present issues.
Well, he's going to be at the table. We call it in Springfield the four tops, the Republican and Democratic leaders of the state House and state Senate. So he'll be there. But Mark, do you think that at least in the beginning, Welch will do anything but in a sense rubber stamp the Pritzker agenda? Or do you think, I don't even know if there's a policy where there is daylight between them. How do you think that will evolve?
Well, I think he'll listen to his caucus if he wants to stay speaker. I mean, he'll follow he'll follow and lead his members. I think that's what he has to do. And I don't think I haven't observed that much daylight between the governor and the legislature, but there will be things, and they're going to have to push him at times.
Wow. So I don't know, and so many people don't know Speaker Welch or at all. So Rachel, tell us a little bit about him in a real compressed way, just 1, 2, 3 things for people, that he's either known for or what he's done or something that is just interesting about him as we get to know one of these newly powerful people in state government.
He's 49 years old. He's a Maywood native. He's beginning his 5th term in the House. One of the weird facts that I recently found out was that he signed a bill trying to mandate teaching cursive in Illinois schools. And there are a couple of other things, sorry, on the spot, things go out of my brain, but those are some of the things that come to mind initially.
Well, that cursive thing I'm interested in, and that is, we'll see more about that. Do you see, Mark, that in this when we come into the remap era now, where usually it's pretty cutthroat because even, everybody has an agenda. Remember the famous story that when then State Senator Barack Obama was in a remap, he personally went to the map room or who knows what it will be now in the COVID era and with computers. He went in and went through his district, block by block to try to get the best deal. Mark,
they all do.
Right. So
they all do.
Do you think Welch can use the power he has somehow in the remap to what end? Or do you think he will share that? How do you think whatever his style may be will show in this big job of drawing these lines?
Well, I assume it'll start by defending the Black Caucus and the Latino Caucus from, incursions caused by the population changes. Senator Lightford's comments on that were very interesting to me. That they're sort of counting on an overall population drop to leave the ratios, I guess, fairly similar. But I don't know. I myself haven't figured out how things shake out there. So I'm sure that he's going to do the same thing as Mike Madigan did, though, which is to try to keep that majority of his as high as possible. If he comes out of the next election with only 66, people are going to look at that as a failure of some sort.
Well, we'll see for the remap and many other chapters to come in this new era in Illinois politics. And as we start next week with the new president, with the inauguration a week from tonight of Joe Biden. Laura, is there one last question we have for the panel?
Well, I would like to come back to Senator Lightford, and thank you for staying with us, Senator. We haven't talked a lot about COVID, and the governor announced today that there's a possibility. Well, news came out today. There's a possibility that the governor may start to relax some restrictions on restaurants. The Mayor Lightfoot has said that she's very much in favor of that, and she's been pushing hard for that. What's the one thing we should be really focusing on? The incoming president has said COVID is his top priority. What's the biggest need and challenge that we have right now on COVID in Illinois, and what are you doing to help advance that?
Well, our focus is a lot, Laura, around vaccination. As we're receiving those vaccination in from the federal government, making sure that they're delivered in a timely fashion, that they're kept at the temperature that they should be, and that they're administered properly with one release. A few weeks later, you get the second portion. At first, there was some challenge there. And then we're following the list. First, those essential workers, doctors and nurses. Now we're moving towards teachers. Our goal is to make sure we get to a place where we can get our kids back in school, but it's important that the teachers feel safe, the families feel safe in sending their kids, and that vaccinations are available for that industry. So we're just moving the ball on who's next in line to receive those vaccinations.
And how would you say the state is doing so far?
I see we're doing fine with the delivery that we have. I know our governor has done a lot to make sure that there was additional vaccinations from Pfizer and some of those companies coming to Illinois. But as soon as we get them, there was some shakeups originally with some bad, they didn't keep them at the temperature. They gave the full dose instead of coming back. So now I believe that everyone's pretty much accustomed to it in the medical space, and we're doing pretty good. Now we just have to see the comfort level of our constituents in receiving the vaccination.
Well, we all wish you the best of luck with that, because everyone in the states needs that to be a successful goal. So I want to thank all of our guests, Senator Lightfoot, Rachel Hinton, and Mark Brown from our team at the Chicago Sun-Times. And Lynn, I'll throw it back to you for our close.
I'm going to be the close. And again, thanks to everyone on this epic news night that we're on. But one of the things that makes this At the Virtual Table go is that it's a Sun-Times show. And to make the Sun-Times a healthy publication, we need you to subscribe. At the Virtual Table is just one of the tasty offerings that you get from the Chicago Sun-Times. And right now, we have amped up our digital offerings to bring you everything that you want with just one subscription. The e-paper, which I wake up every morning and read here in Washington. It's the daily digital replica with a special look at the day. You have two choices then. If you just get for $2.49 a month, you could get this wonderful e-paper, and you could get access to all our digital products. Remember, the Chicago Sun-Times is your local paper. We're here to tell your stories. We need your support to help us so we can be there when you need us, and we could tell you things that you cannot learn by yourself, we hope. Mark's reporting in Springfield, Rachel's reporting in Springfield, and going around the city, telling the big stories and the little ones is what the Chicago Sun-Times does. So we hope so much that you will go straight from this show to suntimes.com, subscribe, and sign up for the Chicago Sun-Times. You see it on the screen. And with that, thank you for joining us. We'll be back next month. And Laura, I forgot the date. It's February.
It's around this time of the month.
It will be. So here's the thing. We'll keep you in suspense for the next show, February 18th. Thank you, Brian. Thank you for the whole staff that works behind the scenes to keep us going. And there's an encore presentation of this show that will be living on YouTube. You could find it at Sun-Times Facebook page. So you could see this again and again until we come back to you in February. Until then, thanks for joining us.
Thanks.